Welcome back, everybody. I'm opening the show now because closing the show, apparently, I'm not the best at that.
Well,
Or at least a segment, not the show.
let me let in a little secret. There's a floor director who basically tells you how long each segment is.
Oh dear.
And Holly gets on a roll, and she was talking about her 7 to 14 meals a day, and was completely ignoring the floor director. Now the challenge, our floor director was eating also at the same time, so communication skills were a little rough. But
Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's get to news you can use. We
That
actually
sounds
have
like a
some
great
important
idea.
stuff to say, or at least some interesting things
Okay.
to talk about. I don't know
I
how
wish
important.
a candidate would say that. This stuff's kind of important, but it isn't.
At least it's interesting.
Let's talk a little politics. Let's talk a little
New York.
New York stuff.
New York's kind of crazy right now. I don't know what's going on. It's like women's rights, and I think we've taken a step back a little bit. And it's kind of the last few weeks combined. We had, like, of course, the firing of Jill Abramson from the New York Times,
And all
which
she
was
did,
weird.
and here's the challenge that this situation brings up. If a woman is tough and
Pushy. Use the words they used. Pushy,
pushy,
tough,
qualities that would be admired
aggressive. These
those
were the words that were used after they let her go.
those words are buzz for the B word.
Oh, totally. And for being an editor of the New York Times, you would want pushy, aggressive, and tough.
And I think she only won 8, or the newspaper won 8 Pulitzers during her reign.
Oh my
So from an
gosh.
editorial content standpoint, she did a wonderful job.
And her pay, she found out that she was being paid far less than her previous, editor. And then people that were even below her were making more money.
How do
No
people
excuse.
defend women not making as much as men?
There is no defense. What do you say? Okay, so beyond that, even more fun is the New York Post. Now, they were going after the mayor,
Bill de Blasio.
Bill de Blasio, his wife. And she's this beautiful, educated career lady who had her first child at 40. And she was being interviewed for a profile on the cover of New York Post. And she was just talking about how, it was a hard transition. She's 40 years old. She's had a life. She's had a career. And she struggled with the whole idea of, now I'm in mommy time. I'm taking care of little kids running around. It was a hard transition. She was just being honest. I don't know what woman out there, no matter what age, we were talking about that in the edit bay, everybody was there of different ages, and we're all like, what age would you not have it be a tough transition, especially the older you get? She was just being honest, and guess what the headlines were?
What?
I'm a bad mom.
The New York Post is owned by the same.
Silly.
It is a very, very right-wing publication.
Hmm.
Bill de Blasio is a Democrat,
Hmm.
and he came on.
They want to get him.
They really want to
They
get
don't
him.
like
And,
him.
and Bill de Blasio has had a rough first couple months in the job of being mayor of New York, which is one of the toughest jobs in the world. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But that being said, everything that you look at in the Post has to be filtered through the perspective of a right-wing publication.
Hmm.
And so, unfortunately, when we get into media these days, there are very few center of the road. New York Times, which we were just talking about, is truly the greatest newspaper in the world. I mean, it just phenomenal. The brain power just to read that paper is more than. I used to
know.
get the
It takes
Times
a
on
while.
Sunday, and you feel so guilty because there's so many
much
great
that
stories.
you just can't get to.
And I end up coloring in USA Today beforehand. But it's such a great newspaper. But the Times is perceived to be a little liberal,
Hmm.
whereas the Post is definitely conceived way right. And in this town, I think the Deseret News is perceived to be a little bit conservative, and the
Hmm.
Tribune is considered a little bit more to the left. So, unfortunately, in media, you don't have anyone in the center of the road anymore.
Which just means to me you don't have the truth. Because people are spinning
the
it to
truth
be
is
a certain way, and the truth is always somewhere right there in the middle.
And I guess the best thing you can do is read, if you're very interested in things, and read a couple different newspapers.
Mhm.
And now with the advent of every newspaper being online, you have access to so much information every day. I've got an app in my phone where I've got about 30 newspapers that I
Mhm.
can pull up. And I enjoy doing that, spending half an hour a day seeing things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
But I'm a news and politics junkie. So
Well, I think that's how everybody should look at the news. I think taking one source is always going to be one-sided. And in this case right now, what's interesting is we have both sides in New York, something going on with women. And there was even that Mitch McConnell. He
Mi-
made a comment recently about a female surgeon. He used the word female. It was really random.
Mitch McConnell is running for re-election, and he is the Senate minority leader.
Uh-huh.
And what's happened in politics now is because of the Tea Party, all these Republican candidates have to run farther to the right.
Oh, yeah.
They have to really appease, and in primaries, a very small percentage of Republicans or Democrats, for that matter, vote. And so a small minority of the Republican Party is really dictating a lot of policy decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And in past years, they've nominated 3 candidates. Sharon Engel in Nevada was the worst,
Mm-hmm.
but 2 candidates who joked about rape, and which
Yikes.
last cycle. And so as a result, the Democrats have held on to the U.S. Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And so now what the Republican Party is trying to do is preempt these Tea Party people, and by and large, they've achieved that goal. So they're nominating more mainstream Republicans. The challenge is, from their standpoint, when you move farther right, virtually every Republican senator will not vote or has not voted on equal wages for women.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is an indefensible
It's
position.
well, this Monica Webby is a pediatric neurosurgeon out of Oregon and a Senate candidate. She's a Republican. And it was almost like he was surprised she was a female. He was like announcing it. It was just a weird way of saying it, like, here's our female, which anyway, so out of New York, to sum it up, it's kind of a weird state. We can take a look at it and wonder how far we've come as far as women's equal rights and
Equal
especially in
pay.
the workforce.
Now, let me ask you a tricky question.
Okay.
How should, in religion, typically men have the upper hand? How do you rationalize that?
In religion?
Yeah, in other words, in many religions,
Mm-hmm.
women can't be priests or
Oh, okay. There we
bishops
go.
or that sort of thing. How do you rationalize that one? Let me put you on the stump on this one.
I don't know that I have a pay grade high enough to answer that question, Trip
Boy,
Mitchell.
did you just see that dodge? She just got the heck out of the way.
I learned from the best.
Well, if you've got a tough question, but that's a challenge. And if all our institutions don't venerate women
Yeah.
and allow them to be equal, how can you argue that pay should
But
be equal?
that's like an age old. I mean, that's just like tradition and age old. And I think every religion on its own, right? I don't know what every religion believes, but I think they'll say there are different roles for men and women, and the role for men is this, and we give that, and women is this, and then some women will say that's
How do you
not
feel
equal.
how do you feel about women in combat?
How do I feel about it?
Yeah, because most of our services just recently,
Uh-huh.
up until just a few years ago, women could not be actually in combat.
Really?
They had to be in support roles. And
Okay.
so women have been in combat in terms of being pilots, that sort of thing, for medevac helicopters, and more recently they've actually become, strike pilots or bombing pilots. But now all of a sudden the Marines and the military is moving to have women actively in combat.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our allies around the world have had women in combat. Israel, a lot of places have done it. So we're kind of catching up in that way. How do you feel about it?
Maybe this is like a horrible reverse discrimination, because I almost think like, ooh, I don't want to see our ladies out there on the front lines. But we were just at the gun show recently, and we were talking to Mitch there, and he was saying that women are some of the best shooters, some of the best, at when they really get trained, usually better than guys. So not to say they couldn't do it, as far as should be on the front lines. I don't know. Because they
How would
have
you look in
babies
a-
at home and that sort of thing. I
Boy,
don't know.
did you just, about 6 minutes ago, you were Suffragette City. You were
I
pushing for
know.
equal rights for women.
See?
And now all of a sudden you're concerned about how you'd look in a helmet.
No, that's not it at all.
I would appreciate if you were a little bit more
because
consistent.
let's be
on your
honest, I would
arguments.
look cute.
Okay. Hold on. Let's see. Russia, we've got to halt this battle for a few minutes while I look cute and
I'm
get my
just
makeup
kidding.
done.
I'm just kidding. I'd have a lot of black on or something and a lot of camouflage, hopefully, and put me somewhere hidden really well.
One of the things that when you look at women being equal is the police.
Mm.
And up until 30 years ago, you didn't find many female police officers. And interesting, having dated a female cop here in Salt Lake, I'm glad I had to add female there. I'm not Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
Just so I don't get some garbage from the crew. But that being said, women cops in many cases are much more effective
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have the machismo, and so many
Yeah.
things can be talked. If you don't come in with your chest out and you come in and trying
Check
to
your
find,
ego.
check your ego and check that macho stuff that a lot of people have in their 20s, and females can diffuse the situation and make sure it doesn't get violent.
So would you put ladies on the front line?
I would. I
Really?
think that if you're going to be an equal society, that's really what you need to do.
Okay.
So
Wow.
now that we've solved the world's problems,
I think we
and that
have. I feel really solid about that.
you've been on every side of the women's issue. When we come back, we're going to talk a little paranormal activity. You're
Ooh,
watching
I'm so
Talk Utah
excited.
right here on Comcast.